And in the case of SN8, we have traders from all over the world who otherwise maybe wouldn't even be able to contribute to any kind of hedge fund or any kind of trading strategy without the SN8 platform. What we're doing is enabling anyone, no matter what age you are. If you're a good trader, you're a good trader. You're going to get rewarded.
I can kind of paint the picture of the pipeline a little bit for you to see where everything connects. But essentially, it's a non-custodial ecosystem where you can come to Glitch Financial, bring your own brokerage account, subscribe to a strategy that's curated on top of PTN signals, and then the trades from that strategy automatically ported into your brokerage account and traded on your funds. We want to be a leader in the financial analytics space in Bittensor, and we want to help new subnets that are getting going, especially if they can help our miners get more potent signals and be more competitive. We want to make sure that we are representing Bittensor well, and that we're making connections outside of Bittensor for any tools or investors who want to come in and put funds in Glitch Financial and bring value. I mentioned before, we're taking all the revenue from Glitch Financial, putting that back in the ecosystem.
You're a subnet developer. People's maybe livelihoods could potentially be in your hands a little bit when you make a change. If there's a bug, it can be high stakes. Definitely try not to test and prod too much. Try to make your changes more incrementally. Give plenty of notice when you're going to change anything. The more feedback, the better.
Welcome to the Ventura Labs podcast. Today, we're joined by Jordan and Thomas, core developers at Taoshi, the team behind Proprietary Trading Network, PTN. They'll trace Taoshi's rise from early experiments to a full-scale trading subnet, explain how community-driven feedback shaped the network, and unveil Glitch Financial, a SaaS portal for PTN signals, plus the new Active Validator Program. They'll share insights on miner performance, ML-driven trading, and guidance for aspiring subnet developers. Now, back to Jordan and Thomas with the 49th Ventura Labs podcast.
All right, Jordan, Thomas from Taoshi, how are you guys doing today?
Doing good. Thanks for having us.
Great. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Glad to get you guys on. Let's start with, what is each of y'all's roles at Taoshi?
So I'm the director of R&D, managing our R&D efforts. That's like both the incentive mechanism and kind of how we take the signals curated on PTN and take that to mass market with Glitch. So that's some of the infrastructure in between. Of course, not possible without Jordan. Zero possible without Jordan.
I appreciate that. But yeah, I'm working on back-end data engineering, making sure all the signals we get from our traders come in and we can actually make trades on them. It's tracking signal time, making it fast, secure, and when you have great leadership like Thomas and Arash, makes it much easier. So shout out to them.
Very, very humble, Jordan. So what made you guys decide to work at Taoshi in the beginning? Because both of you guys have been there since there was 8 subnets total.
Man, I think I got kind of lucky. I wasn't really expecting to stumble into Bittensor at all. I don't know if many people really are, but I had a conversation with Arash. I saw like Taoshi was making some open source software. I was really looking to contribute to something. I thought their product was really interesting. I was into time series analytics at the time, and I ended up just getting on a call with Arash. I was like, "Hey man, what's the best way for me to write code OSS for you guys?" And he was like, "We're growing really fast, and we need you." And so I ended up popping in really early, like really early, and ended up switching over to incentive mechanism as kind of like primary focus, at least like the statistics aspects of it. Of course, like Jordan just overhauled the entire engineering system, but yeah.
I worked with Arash before. He was my manager at LinkedIn, so he wanted me to join for a while, and I was at my 4-year mark basically at LinkedIn, where your shares basically significantly decrease how much they're giving you, and I'm like, this seems like a pretty good opportunity to join, and I was telling Arash like, hey man, I would not go to a small company again. Like I was like gonna re-interview for like big tech, but I'm gonna make the exception for you because really you were the best manager I've had, and I'm like very confident you're gonna crush it with your new startup. And I'm just so glad I did join because the past like 15 months or so, yeah, it's been killer. We've built a lot of ground up stuff, a real product that something that you know I look at. And I'm just like wow, like I impressed myself too, just like seeing how we're taking trades. We're like a pseudo exchange, building a real product that's actually gonna trade for other people. We have these models. We have a whole quant team that's able to use these signals and show back tested results that these strategies are gonna work. And it's just like it's great to see it all come together. And yeah, like Arash, like he's a great leader, and without his leadership, yeah, this would not be possible. And yeah, it's been a great ride.
Were both of you guys there pre-subnet, or you'll both enter during the price prediction phase and were part of the transition to what it is now with Proprietary Trading Network? When were the entries for you guys?
When we came in, Arash already had a subnet going for price prediction, and he was trying to run that and the marketing and the business strategy and the engineering. This man never slept. And so we came in, and within like I think 2 weeks, we basically came in at the same time. And within like 2 weeks or a month, uh, came to the conclusion we needed to switch to PTN, like simulated trading instead of price prediction. And the conclusion was like, well, let's just take our existing subnet slot and switch the function live, which apparently was crazy, but we didn't know because we just got here. And Jordan did it. I don't know how. So I'm still like, honestly, it was kind of a blur. Like I don't know how this man did it, but yeah.
How'd you do it, Jordan?
Well, I joined and we were doing Bitcoin price prediction, and Arash says, okay, we need to change direction here, Jordan. You're gonna modify the existing subnet so that we can do kind of like a pseudo exchange type thing. And he talked me through it, and he's like, yeah, you have the template here already of the Bitcoin price prediction. So I looked through it, and I'm like, a lot of what we need is here. A lot of the foundation is here. Getting the actual infrastructure going. It was a very iterative process. Like I started super simple and iterated on top of it, on top of it, on top of it. And I think we're in a good place. We don't have like a real exchange or anything. It's not like crazy complex. But it does the job. Like it was like to have the goal in mind where you want to take trades, which is just an API request, store that, track metrics on top of it. It was straightforward. I don't think it was anything like revolutionary in that sense. There were some definitely interesting challenges, but it makes it easy for us because like there's only 226 hotkeys that can be on a subnet. So the scale is it's relatively small. There's certain design choices that we were able to make that we wouldn't if we had to scale to like thousands, millions of traders at once. So it wasn't too bad. Yeah, a lot of testing helps, a lot of test cases.
Yeah, you guys have been through a lot of iterations, specifically with the incentive mechanism over time. And I assume that's more primarily Thomas in design and then Jordan in implementation. What did those iterations on the incentive mechanism look like, and what was the toll that it took on you guys?
So yeah, when we first kicked off, I mean, I think what nobody really anticipates when they make a subnet is how much people will try to exploit their system. And like at this point, it's kind of ground truth. And I'm like, all right, first like month or two, if you have a new idea, it's not a subnet yet. First month or two are just gonna be brutal, and people are just gonna rip it to shreds. And I think that's kind of just generally accepted, like at this point within the community. True for us too. And so like for the first month or two, it was kind of just like identifying fires and then putting out the fires like nonstop. We were really small, so we were just kind of constantly pushing nonstop. I mean, I want to apologize to our miners, right? But like, but they helped us figure out those bugs too. But yeah, it was just kind of constantly changing the incentive mechanism as we identified people exploiting the system. And kind of the goal always in mind was okay, how can we make the outputs usable? In our case, that means that the outputs from the top traders need to be actionable and need to have insight and predictive power. So, eventually that led us to a platform where there were kind of two major challenges. It was we needed this predictive power from our miners, and in order to do that, we need like a longevity of exposure. So we need like a longer look back window to witness their predictive power over time. But then we also need to make this interpretable, so it's easy for somebody to jump in, particularly for any new talent we want to attract. So, we have this campaign to attract new quant talent. And so that means we need to make it really easy to translate for existing quants to come play in our system. So there was kind of a balance of the two. Of course, like working in blockchain where everybody is anonymous is like an added layer of complexity that traditional prop trading groups don't have to deal with. So there's some specifics that we have in place, which, it's pretty crazy. Like there's massive upside working in Bittensor and in blockchain, because it's open. Anybody can play, anybody can participate, regardless of background, history, etc. But certainly specific challenges. So kind of rambled, but
Yeah. And both of you guys had plenty of options for other career paths you could have took when you joined Taoshi. Were you guys at all hesitant to work full-time in BitTensor when it was what it was, like over a year ago now?
I don't know, Jordan, how you feel?
I kind of when Arash approached me to join, I actually wasn't super familiar with Bittensor. When he gave me the opportunity, I looked into it and I was reading into it a bit, and it seemed very promising. But without Arash, I wouldn't have entered the space. That's at least that's how I see it. Not that I don't think Bittensor is something worth joining on its own, but like so many companies, it's all about who your manager is, and um, I'm happy that I'm in this space, just seeing it grow, seeing it get the adoption and the backing of Barry getting on Coinbase, seeing these like milestones of adoption and usage, Kraken, and I think it's gonna keep running, and I see the vision more and more for sure.
Yeah, I think something that Arash does exceptionally well is involve people in his goals, which I think is a really good sign of a strong leader. I mean, it's kind of like baked into our mission statement too. We want to generate high quality trading signals for the masses. So we want to get as many people involved in what we're building as possible. Um, and we have all sorts of different programs and partnerships within Bittensor, that we've been building, and now we're building something called the Active Validator Program. We're getting even more people involved. Um, so that was like that for me too. He just really had us involved and made a great offer to be like owning this project along with him. And so I think that sense of ownership from like a leadership perspective is probably one of the stronger things that pulled me towards Bittensor at least, and Taoshi.
And through your time developing this subnet, what would you guys consider the hardest parts to achieve what you have with you brought a new novel idea to BitTensor, and then now you're a top 10 subnet over a year later and have seen thus far incredible success in the detail ecosystem.
I could go first, but the early days of it were a challenge. I have a lot of memories of the price filling, people going crazy over the price filling, like, hey, why was my order given this price instead of that? They would give a trading view chart, and it was a challenge. We were building a pseudo exchange, and people, at the end of the day, were competing for money. They put their own money up to register on the subnet, and like it was very important to them that they had accuracy with their orders. And we had a whole dilemma with one of our price providers in the beginning, and it was so bad we had to actually migrate price providers in the middle of launch. Getting that transition, that was tough, and we even had to do a retroactive price update where we said, hey guys, we noticed there was an issue with price fills at this time, so any orders placed before this time are subject to being updated with the right price. and it caused like a lot of commotion in the community. And there was a issue on the update, and we had to revert it and then go back and forth. It was a lot of emotion, a lot of engineering.
Yeah.
For me, that's the most memorable. But I think we're in a good spot now. We're stable, and like from the engineering side, super important here. We have two redundant kind of price sources always on. One goes down, we have the other, and it's been quite a few months, and we're happy with the way that's looking. That's the engineering answer, I guess.
Yeah. I so the expectation from the Bittensor community in terms of rate of progress is harsh. I think it's great for progress and development to have pressure, particularly when there's so much attention and funding going to these subnets. Um, but d- each group, as they curate information that's valuable with their outputs of their subnet, they're going to want to utilize it somehow. And I think we've seen parallels. A lot of groups are building out a Web 2 go-to-market strategy, which is like a typical SaaS platform. And of course, ours is Glitch Financial. And the rate of development for large-scale enterprise software is typically longer schedule than most people are aware of. And so, like, just orienting people's perspectives on development timelines for like large-scale projects has been frustrating within the community. When we're trying to build something long term and like staying in terms of its value, um, people want results like ASAP and now, and it's fair. I mean, it is an open market, but it's been a challenge for sure.
And throughout y'all's tenure at Taoshi, there has been a fair amount of controversy and FUD around what you guys are doing. How is it dealing with that from the technical perspective that you guys have?
Man, from the technical perspective, it is challenging. Emotional perspective, political perspective, you understand it because people are competing. Like Jordan said, like there's other people with similar ideas. They want to build something great themselves. We want to involve people. Like ideally, they build with us, but everybody is kind of vying for attention in one way or the other. And oftentimes that comes down into nuanced debates that are highly technical in nature and emotionally charged, which is not like a recipe for constructive conversation. So I wish that there was a little bit more patience and cool-headed conversation. Um, but like to some degree, I think most groups within this ecosystem are just going to have to prove value through the generation of revenue using the signals or information curated by their subnets. So we're kind of chugging, building out Glitch, making sure that like we're tracking latencies and order fills and user account creation is all accurate and such on different brokerage accounts. We're kind of just like chugging and building, knowing that as long as we track forward, like everything's going to be okay. But it's been tricky, man.
Jordan, anything to add to that in
I
terms of
think no,
working
that's a
through
great
the fun?
answer. I,
And Taoshi has a lot of partners. I'd say one of the notable ones is Timeless. How closely do you guys work with other teams and groups within Bittensor or other subnets?
We get a lot of great feedback from like, I mean, there's so many notable contributors to what we're building. Timeless is a great contributing member as well, who they help us monitor the quality of our signal of our price fills on PTN, and they report bugs to us. Um, Delta Prop Shop is another one who's built a really incredible product on top of what we do, getting traditional traders onboarded in a simpler interface. Um, so, the beauty of it is that because our code is open source, uh, anybody can build on top of it. And because we have this whole process now where we track out all of our developments and these kind of timelines and roadmaps and proposals, people will kind of have a sense of where we're going to go. At least we hope so. And so they can build with us, which is super cool. But yeah, Timeless has been kind of along for the journey with us as we've been building, tracking our growth, and definitely been super helpful in helping us identify issues.
And just kind of adding on to like who we're working with along those lines, it's incredible that when you have this decentralized application that anybody in the world can really come and compete or contribute. And in the case of SN8, we have traders from all over the world who are, who otherwise maybe wouldn't even be able to contribute to any kind of hedge fund or any kind of trading strategy without the SN8 platform. What we're doing is, enabling anyone, no matter what age you are. If you're a good trader, you're a good trader. You're going to get rewarded, and we're going to be able to use that that signal to make a better automated trading algorithm. This is one of my favorite discussion points for SN8.
Is
And we might need
anybody
to
in
cut
the
the. We might need to cut the. I'll have to, I'll have to check.
I like that emphasizes anybody can come trade on PTN. You just
Yeah.
need a couple towel for registration.
Exactly. We might need
Alright.
our HR and social media teams to approve that statement.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to check in with some people. One of the things that has been on your roadmap since detail has been an idea was glitch financial. And that's, from my perspective, that's bringing the trading signals from Subnet 8 Proprietary Trading Network to the masses. That is, I think, the consensus perspective on what glitch financial will be. How would you guys describe what glitch financial is?
Yeah. So Glitch Financial is an enterprise level SaaS platform. And I can kind of paint the picture of the pipeline a little bit for you to see where everything connects. But essentially, it's a non-custodial ecosystem where you can come to Glitch Financial, bring your own brokerage account. We try to support the largest ones. Um, Subscribe to a strategy that's curated on top of PTN signals, and then the trades from that strategy automatically ported into your brokerage account and traded on your funds. And because it's non-custodial, you can turn it off anytime you want and take the funds. But it's a monthly subscription fee depending on the size of the account. Of course, to start, we're growth hacking, so it's all $1 to get people acclimated to our system and get familiar with it. I can speak on the strategies just for a minute to try to help clarify how they connect to PTN. But essentially, we have all of our top traders trading on a variety of assets, and they use different strategies. So, they look at different factors for how they determine when markets will change, and we can actually track exposures to different types of trading behaviors. So maybe we have an aversion to something like mean reversion. We can actually track that amount of exposure to an asset and then control for it. So our quants are looking at our top traders, looking at which assets they're trading on, which time horizons they're trading on, and the frequency of trades. And they're able to look at how we can make predictions about future returns based on prior returns and different factors that our traders are exposed to, so that we can build a risk balanced portfolio on top of them. So they do all of that. We build a strategy that then tracks the performance of those miners with a certain criteria or weight, and that automatically ports the signals from those traders into this aggregate strategy on top of the user accounts in Glitch Financial. So when you subscribe for a strategy, you're actually subscribing to like a collective knowledge of the top traders in our ecosystem. Yeah, and you can delineate by asset class, things
And
like that.
Tom,
So if you
is
just want
this a good opportunity to discuss the Active Validator Program as well?
yeah, absolutely. So I don't know if you know, Grant, about the Active Validator Program,
I do
but
not know about the
you
Active
do now.
Validator.
So basically, the idea is that we have our quants who are doing this factor analysis and research and back testing the results from our traders to understand which strategies we want to deploy. But we don't want to be the only ones doing that. We want to crowdsource information and collective intelligence on that as well. So essentially, what we're doing is devoting resources to anybody who wants to come in as a validator, who's going to have access to these raw signals, to build strategies on top of the signals and then port them into Glitch Financial. So there's actually going to be a competitive process. People are going to take strategies, build them on top of our signals, and then compete on top of those signals, also on Glitch Financial. The top performers will once again be rewarded. So really what we want, the whole motivation behind it is we want people who are having access to our information and the signals that are curated to be active with that information and reward the ones who are most able to deliver value on top of our traders.
Okay, that is interesting. That was actually the exact next question I was going to ask you was, will you guys allow people or allow miners to be the ones that produce these network models that sit on top of your miners and compete on that?
In fact,
Will
we're going
this
to
look like
open source.
subnet? What is
It's
this?
it's not a subnet, and we're going to have them compete on Glitch Financial. So we're actually going to have it like a competitive environment that's going to be run within like Taoshi's ecosystem. They will be paid in Theta, of course, and like we're going to display the results publicly. But um, yeah, in fact, we're going to try to make this really easy. We're going to open source our backtesting engine and all of the tools required to synthesize these network models on top of our traders and then port those signals into our existing infrastructure. So if you want to make a strategy on top of our miners, you don't need to rebuild Glitch Financial and figure out latencies and brokerage accounts and user sign-ins and authentication and all that. All you need to do is look at factor assessment from the miners, use an ML model, whatever you want to be competitive, and then port over those signals directly into our system.
Interesting. For the design aspect of it, is there a reason that it's within the glitch financial and not just a subnet? Like you take, I don't know, a select percent of admissions and allocate it towards that?
Yeah, we thought about that as well. It's so straightforward if it's based on pure revenue on Glitch Financial, um, and it's easy for us to validate because we can track the user accounts. So it's in some ways it feels very straightforward and pure to kind of this mission of bringing in revenue back to our token. Um, so I mean we've already committed to devoting revenue from Glitch Financial back to Theta. So we're gonna run buybacks with essentially all of our revenue generated on Glitch Financial. So it's kind of in line with that same ethos.
Will this be sort of a thing where it's people that are on Glitch Financial will have a menu of options of different models they can subscribe to, or will you guys choose what model and you guys just serve one model or a combination of these models that people create on Glitch Financial?
Yeah, we'll probably have a handful. We want to pre-vet them to make sure that they're balancing risk exposures pretty well. Um, but so we won't have like thousands, but we're gonna have a set menu probably of like maybe up to 10 at a time. Again, depending on the asset, so you can choose different time horizons that you would like to trade or different asset classes that you want to go for. Maybe you could just do a Bitcoin model, something like that. So, but you want to keep it kind of straightforward. You know, we don't want to have like uh, overdone menu kind of situation. So
I think there'll generally be like a trade-off in the different strategies where you have some with higher returns, but maybe higher
yeah,
drawdowns,
yeah.
and we'll make that like super clear to the users. But yeah, our benchmark absolutely is like beating just holding S&P or just holding Bitcoin. Like we're looking at doing much better than that. We have a lot of info on social too. We have some preliminary results that I think a lot of people will find really compelling just to start. Yeah.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, I think I think it was either 3 or 6 month performance was 39% on the 3x levered portfolio.
Yeah, and we will let users choose a range of leverages that they want to use on top of our strategies. Our goal, I mean, our real objective is to make something that is slow and steady, and then let users choose excess risk beyond that, but to have a baseline model that's productive and low risk. So yeah, if you crank it up, of course, like you could You can get higher returns, but higher risk, of course.
Yeah, would come with increased volatility.
Yeah.
What went into the decision making behind the 90% miner burn? Whose call was this? What was the thought process there? Why is this necessary?
Yeah. So, our first and foremost thought is Glitch Financial, and it is making sure that Glitch Financial is profitable and pulling the value back into our ecosystem. And the way that that can happen is when our miners are delivering more value. If miners are delivering more value, there's more value to extract and submit onto Glitch Financial. We can bring more users on, we can scale faster. So what does it mean for our miners to produce higher value? There's kind of two ways they can do it. They can have more potent signals, or they can carry more capacity. So right now we have our miners simulated at about 100K. So if you look at the top 10 miners, it's about $1 million. And that's not a huge amount of volume, but it's something that we're excited to have our miners competing on in the coming months. If you haven't been tracking us, one of our major points of development has been on Collateral. And the whole point of Collateral is that miners are actually going to post value into a contract, and the amount of value that they post into the contract will determine the amount of capital that they can trade on PTN. So that will directly correspond to the amount of value that they can bring to the table. And we've talked about this pretty publicly. We've had a roadmap for it for a while. We hired a smart contracts engineer who is dedicated to build this task about a month ago. And after we hired them, we did a deep dive into the smart contracts engineering and made a prototype and realized that the design would be a challenge to implement correctly, and we wanted it to be audited, of course, if there were going to be large funds that were traded on it. And so, we're thinking about this transition pathway of how do we get to where we are now, where our miners are trading with 100K, up to a point where we have massive value that our miners can compete on capacity with and deliver that to users on Glitch Financial in a way that's sustainable, where at every moment we have the value that's created from the subnet match the amount of value that is paid to the miners. And so essentially one of the pathways that we explored was this 90% burn, where we would prototype our Collateral implementation and we would roll that out like essentially 2 weeks or 4 weeks after. So I'm using the reference point as when we started talking about the burn, right? 2 to 4 weeks after that, we would roll out a prototype on this Collateral contract. And then after the prototype is launched, we increase capacity on these contracts, and miners are competing on the capacity. And while we ramp into that, we have a burn from our miners that tapers immediately as we get Collateral in place. And that way we tried to unify the value that was paid to the miners and then the value that the miners are sending off to our system. So that was the psychology. That was what we proposed. Miners weren't very happy about it, of course, understandable. But we ended up basically having to have a conversation with our miners about different pathways. And we love our miners because of this. They are so proactive in conversations, providing alternative solutions. So essentially we did a couple of things and found essentially a way to navigate it together. One, we increased the size of our miner accounts and simulated miner accounts so that more value was generated by the miners. And we also looked to increase the potency of their signals and longevity by increasing the look-back window. So we did a potency increase and then a slight scale increase that's going to push us through this initial Collateral prototype, which is going to go out really soon, within the next week or so, just for people to get playing with on testnet before things start to scale out. So sorry for the long-winded answer.
No, that was perfect. A follow-up question to this then is, with those Collateral smart contracts, so you put in 100K, does that get you through the challenge period too, and now you have just a live miner? Or is it going to be you post Collateral, challenge period, then live miner, you get deregistered, you lose the Collateral? What does it look like technically in the implementation aspect there?
Yeah, you won't pass. In fact, collateral, one of the components that miners are going to be competing on with the introduction of collateral is the raw dollar returns based on the size of the account. So that's going to be likely one new feature of the scoring mechanic on the network, where miners should have an incentive not only to continue scoring well from a risk-adjusted returns perspective, but also bringing in raw dollar amounts and encouraged to increase the size of their accounts because we want more volume on the network. So miners that can do well exceptionally on a risk-adjusted returns basis over an exceptionally long period of time are going to score exceptionally well. And then miners who do well with large capital bases on a risk-adjusted returns basis will be able to potentially score well in a shorter time horizon, of course, because they have more at stake. So, yeah, that's basically the philosophy behind it. And challenge period is also something that we've been exploring behind the hood a little bit. Um, but we're essentially looking to make challenge period more competitive. So we want to make sure that people are constantly ensured to be bringing in value to the table. So we're also looking to evolve challenge period a bit and break it into something more like a tiering system, actually, where our top miners are kind of constantly vying for this kind of S tier bracket. So challenge period will kind of be more fluid moving forward. And so this is something we've been prototyping a little bit behind the scenes, but we'll be bringing out a proposal pretty soon. Pretty excited about it.
Just to clarify the collateral aspect here, you guys will take the funds that are in that smart contract and enact the trades that that specific miner says, so they can actually increase their collateral over time with the trades they take, or decrease it over time if they trade bad? Or is it just they post that as like a multiplier to their paper trading, and then they lose it if they get deregistered? I think that's what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, got it. Essentially, each theta is going to be equivalent to some value of US dollar that you can trade with. So the amount of theta that you post in terms of the collateral contract will determine the size of your capital base. Capital base being directly impacting on your overall ability to score well, because larger accounts are going to have a higher capacity to bring in pure dollar returns. So if you score well over time and you start to bring in returns in terms of theta emissions, you'll be able to take those theta emissions and make yourself more competitive by posting that to your account as well. So that's essentially the thought process behind it. Of course, if you hit a drawdown or criteria like that, we'll have a mechanic in place that allows you to withdraw funds from the contract and deregister if you so choose at any time, where essentially we'll look at something like the instantaneous risk that you had taken on, that's something like a high watermark drawdown, when you choose to deregister. But of course there will be an option. So if you want to take your data from the contract and go, that's always an option.
Okay, so there isn't a risk of losing what is in that collateral contract?
You certainly you could. So if you hit a 10% drawdown, you get eliminated, you lose the funds.
Oh, okay. So it's
No.
you only have the choice to walk away before you hit that.
Yeah. Well, if you choose to walk away, let's say you have 5% drawdown. This is the initial design, so we're kind of getting in the weeds, but like
Yeah.
pretty sure we're gonna go with something like this. We for those who don't know, we have a 10% drawdown elimination criteria. So if you at any point hit a 10% drawdown from your high watermark, you're eliminated from the platform. You can't trade again. And if you're at something like 5%, you could recover, but you're at 5% drawdown relative to your high watermark, and you choose to withdraw funds, then we would do something like take half of the funds and then give you back the rest. But if you can recover back to your high watermark and then you choose to go, then you keep it all.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And I know Thomas has to run soon, so if you ever gotta leave, just let me know. But I met you guys at the Endgame conference. You guys go to a lot of conferences for Taoshi, and at Endgame specifically, you guys were like 8 deep. what is the purpose? What do you think is the importance of showing up to these conferences in numbers and showing face in person?
Man, we want to make relationships with Bittensor folks. Like we want to be a leader in the financial analytics space in Bittensor, and we want to help new subnets that are getting going, especially if they can help our miners get more potent signals and be more competitive. So we want to build those bridges. We want to make sure that new groups have the tools they need. We want to make sure that we are representing Bittensor well, and that we're making connections outside of Bittensor for any tools or investors who want to come in and put funds in Glitch Financial and bring value. As I mentioned before, we're taking all the revenue from Glitch Financial, putting that back in the ecosystem. So, if we find big investors who want to put funds into Glitch Financial, that's valued directly back into Bittensor. So we think it's so important to be out there chatting with folks and just and really just making those connections within the community, meeting our miners, chatting with validators, making sure that everything is everybody's aware of our plans and our roadmap, and there's no kind of blind sides in the next few months. So I don't know, Jordan, you have anything else to throw in?
Yeah, I mean more on like the personal side, but meeting the actual miners, validators, putting a face to the name is really rewarding, cool. Because at the end of the day, you're building a product, people are using it, benefiting from it, getting to meet them, see, get their feedback is pretty rewarding. So I definitely want to continue going to these, if anything, just for that, that gratification and that feedback in person. It goes a long way.
And you guys have been to many conferences now. Which ones have been your favorite? Which ones stick out to you?
Man, Proof of Talk in Paris was pretty cool. It was just really awesome to all get together. This was pretty recent, but Bittensor was kind of a major focus of the event, and it's just really cool to see something that you've been involved with kind of since the launch of subnets. We're kind of the beginning of it, and to watch it through, to be there through the story. It's only been like a year and a half, but again, uh, felt like a lot longer with all the stuff that happened, and it's just cool to see it in a place like that with a community that's so excited about what we're building. There's so many people who are just learning about it for the first time, and it's like I think Jordan mentioned earlier, like seeing the kind of institutional players that are now getting behind it and seeing the kind of momentum and milestones that it's hitting. That was one of those moments where it really hit for me. Um, so that's probably my vote right now.
Oh yeah, definitely. That was a milestone for BitTensor, and it's obvious there's so much interest in it. The BitTensor specific talks were booked out, people flowing into the hallway. The ones that weren't necessarily BitTensor specific, maybe, not the most engagement. It was very clear that the BitTensor just was getting tons of interests, and from what I heard, they want to do this again, and maybe make it almost exclusively just BitTensor related information. So um, I would definitely go again. Yeah.
You'll be there next year. I have one last question for you guys today, and that is, what advice do you guys have for subnet developers, whether it be current subnet developers, aspiring subnet developers, since you guys have been there since 8 subnets were live on BitTensor total, you're battle tested, you've gone through a lot. What advice do you have for subnet developers?
Jordan, you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts. I think the one thing is like you have at the end of the day, when it comes to money, people are ruthless. They're gonna get emotional, and you're a subnet developer. People's maybe livelihoods could potentially be in your hands a little bit when you make a change. If there's a bug, there, it can be high stakes. Definitely try not to test and prod too much. Try to make your changes more incrementally. Give plenty of notice when you're gonna change anything, and more feedback, the better.
Yeah. Yeah, we started doing this proposal-based system for any changes. I want to say maybe 4 or 5 months into it, and that allowed us to have this level of interaction with our community, which I think was super helpful. Embracing your community. I mean, like Jordan said, there's a lot of emotions that run high. Money's involved. You get a lot of FUD and hate, of course. It's natural. But then there's going to be people who are just passionate about what you're building if you're passionate about it. And you got to embrace them and bring them into the fold because there's a lot of smart people in Bittensor. Um, so building a community and like allowing the community to thrive around what you're building and co-own it is, I think, one of the most powerful things that Arash did and what I would recommend to any new subnet owners. Um, I know that other subnets have had a lot of success with these bounty programs, and it's something we want to dive into a lot more. So getting involved in that, directly benefiting people who are building on top of your subnet is something that I think is a great idea. So
Jordan, Thomas, it's been a pleasure chatting with you guys today. Thank you.
thank you,
Thanks for
sir.
having us.
Appreciate it.